Well, good morning, folks. We are ready to start another week of Miyagi Mornings. I thought it'd be fun today to do a topic that's not really heavy weighted at all, or money or anything like that. I guess money can come into it, but we're going to talk about hydroponics today and deciding between Kratky hydroponics and pump-driven aquaponics. And if you don't know the difference, don't worry. We'll cover it in the episode today. As always, I'm just kind of stalling a little bit here to let people come on, making sure that I am streaming on all three platforms. I know we're on YouTube because I'm getting interaction there already. We are streaming on Odyssey, though we don't have a lot of people there. And we're streaming on Float, which continues to grow in the number of people that come check things out on Float. All right. So let's get into this one. We're going to not stall too much today. And let's get the recorder up and we'll knock this out. And I will hang with you guys a little bit after we finish up the podcast portion for the audio show, so you can ask me questions and things like that. Questions are always best in all caps, and questions are always best asked at the end of the podcast portion because I can't really keep a running tally that great otherwise. But I also learned something else cool about StreamYard. Look at in the screen right now. You can see Tom is psyched for this one. Chris H says, "Good morning, Jack. How are you and the family?" All right. Hey, so I can actually show the comments I'm responding to, and I will start using that feature more in the future. So with that, let's get on into it. Here we go. Well, good morning, folks. Welcome to Miyagi Mornings, episode 160. And today we are going to talk about hydroponics. And we're going to talk about hydroponics from two macro levels. We're going to talk about hydroponics from a standpoint of pump-driven, and we're going to talk about it from the standpoint of Kratky, which means no pump. Now, there's actually dozens of permutations and types of hydroponics. There's something called NFT, which is nutrient film technique, not anything to do with cryptocurrency, right? There's ebb and flow or flood and drain. There's dozens of techniques within the techniques. But I just want to start out today with helping you get your mind right around these from this macro level. Either there's a pump or there's not a pump. Now, why would we want a pump in the first place? Why don't we just grow plants in water if that's what hydroponics is all about? More accurately, water with mixed nutrient into it. Why do we need a pump in the first place? And the main reason is if we put plants in water and they can't get enough oxygen, and over time, we start having less and less dissolved oxygen in the water, less available O2. The plant will begin to have its roots rot and it will die. And if you've ever looked at a hydroponic or aquaponic system where the roots are not getting enough oxygen, you don't have to really know what you're doing to look at that and go, I don't know a lot, but I know that doesn't look healthy. And when you look at roots that are getting enough oxygen, you don't have to know a lot to look at that and go, I don't know a lot, but I know that's healthy. Healthy roots are bright white, unless they happen to be a plant that grows a different color root, Healthy roots look healthy. Just like you can usually look at soil and go, that's probably good soil to grow in, and that looks like denuded crap. Like, you don't have to be a genius farmer to look at sand and go, probably not the most fertile environment to grow stuff in. And when you look at deep, black, rich soil, you feel it, you smell it, Okay, so that's the why. We got to get oxygen to the roots. And I think in deciding which one's right for you, and we go into that world of it depends, which is the most honest answer you can give to any question like this, it depends, is to find, well, why did Professor Kratky, PhD, still with us, has a great YouTube channel, link in the video notes here. Why did he invent this thing that now carries his name? And he really didn't. It's been done in the past, but he was the guy that kind of grabbed onto it and made it known, and hence now it has his name attached to it. Well, he wanted to create a way where people could grow food in the undeveloped world, specifically in the tropics, though it works anywhere. But that's what it was. If you look at a lot of the places in the world where people don't have access to food that they can readily produce for themselves, a lot of it's in the tropics. They can grow like fruits and stuff like that, but vegetables require high levels of fertility. That is a luxury in some parts of the world. Rainforest soils, boreal forests, etc. They have really thin soils. They're great for growing trees. They're not so great for growing crops. And the only way you can grow crops is you burn them to the ground. Then you can crop the thing for a season or two, and then you're really in a bad way. So one thing that a lot of these places don't have is easy access to electricity. And he realized, like, you can ship in, a couple bags of fertilizer for fractions of a penny a pound, and you can grow tons of food with a couple buckets of this stuff. You can literally send anywhere in the world. And, if people don't have water, they have other problems. So you can usually come up with water, something to act as a container, and you can ship in the seeds and you can ship in the fertility, and you can feed a village with a few barrels of this stuff for years, right? So how can we develop a way where people that can't just plug into the grid the way that we can do this? And what he came up with is we fill a container so that whatever we're going to plant the seed or small plant into is being touched by the water so it stays moist. We put the plant in, the plant starts sending its roots down. Everything's fine in the beginning. Everything's good to go. No one has to worry about whether or not we got O2 or anything. We just put the brand new stuff in the container. So everything's good. Now, all we have to do then basically is nothing. We do nothing. The water starts to evaporate and the level of the water goes down. And as the level of the water goes down, the roots chase the water. And you get this gorgeous kind of hair root structure above the water, a more typical root structure down in the water. And that air gap allows so much oxygen because you have the atmosphere to the plant. The plant's good and the roots stay healthy. And as the water evaporates down, 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 as long as there's some water left in the reservoir, you're good. And so the first things that most people grow with Kratky, and the first stuff that Kratky grew himself and taught people to grow were basically greens. And you don't have to be a genius to figure out why. You have a short turn time. This is why so many hydro and aquaponics commercial producers do the same thing, right? Because since it's a rapid turn time, you can get product to market quickly and get another batch, and you can get multiple harvests, and you can grow a lot of food in a small space, and it's high dollar food. If you look at what you pay for really high quality, salad greens, you pay almost as much for that as you do for like some kinds of meat and stuff like that when you look at it by the pound. So it's a high ROI. And in a lot of these places that Kratky designed this for, one of the things they really struggle with is not necessarily getting enough calories. You're talking a lot of places where you still have like a significant hunter-gatherer society, but nutrients, right? So vitamins and minerals and things like that. And since we're putting that into the water and the plant's taking it up, it's in a bioavailable form. Hydroponic food, properly produced, is actually extremely healthy and extremely nutritious because the plant will take all the minerals, micro and macro, that it wants out of that solution. And again, if it's in the plant instead of in a pill form like you take a vitamin, I don't oppose that. I definitely use supplements in my life. But if it's inside the plant, it's in the perfect state for your body to absorb it and use it if your body needs it. Your body also takes what it needs. So this is why Kratky did this. So one of the things you should think about is, well, do you lack the ability to plug something into the wall and have power? A little 20 amp drawing pump that costs almost nothing. If you can plug it in, maybe you don't need to do Kratky, because let's talk about the few things that I can tell you that are negative about Kratky. The first is you end up using a lot more fluid per plant grown because you have a significantly sized container. Some people do it in jars or whatever, but then so it's a quart of fluid per plant, right? And so you have a lot of fluid. Additionally, at some point you have to kind of swap that fluid out, and you end up with, in my experience in doing Kratky and doing, ebb and flow and flood and drain and flow through and all different types of stuff using a pump, you seem to actually end up with a lot more waste fluid with Kratky, assuming you don't end up with the other problem, which is if that container goes dry, the plant dies. And it dies almost instantly, right? Especially if you're growing indoors under lights or something like that. it dies real fast. Like the second it doesn't have moisture, as soon as those roots dry up and that last drop of moisture is gone, dead plants. And they're not coming back. Here's another problem with Kratky. And I'm not down on Kratky. This is the truth. Like, this is how this all works. When that water level starts dropping, okay, and you get those beautiful hair-like roots, and you can definitely look, and you can see the roots in the water are a different structure than the roots above the water. If you think, I know, well, what I'll do is I'll fill it back up to like 80%. I'll just add some, I'll just get a jar and just add some and fill it back up. What will happen inevitably is that plant, the roots that were above in the air, they have formed based on being an air gap area that's got high moisture from evaporation. When you cover them with water, they will die. They will die quickly. And the plant usually won't die, but it will be less than healthy. It will be less than optimum. You'll probably lose more than if you would have just went ahead and harvested and planted another plant in its place. You also now, like, let's say you're like, well, I don't want to grow little jars. I want to get maybe some 14-gallon tubs like they sell at Home Depot and Lowe's for mixing mortar and cement in. Great. I use them for lots of things. They even make bigger ones that are 20 gallons. Let's say a 14-gallon one. And you fill that up and you put something over it and you do your Kratky thing with it. Okay, let's say it's time to dump it out and replace it. 14 gallons, it's still 7 gallons of fluid. And let's say it goes down by half. That's still a significant amount of sloshy fluid to get rid of, right? Now, you can put a drain in and a valve, and then you can put some sort of reservoir at the bottom, and you can drain your individual things down into a lower reservoir. But now you're getting into one of the detriments of pumps. Like, you have to have a reservoir at pumps, so you don't really grow down at that bottom level. You have to have a sump. Well, now you have to have a sump with your Kratky to deal with this, right? Do you want to grow indoors or outdoors? Kratky was really built for people to grow just straight up outdoors or in greenhouses, shade houses, etc. That could be ramshackle put together anywhere in the world. If you don't have power to run a little bitty pump, you don't have power to run grow lights. If you're going to do an indoor system running grow lights, you clearly have power. So one of the things I love about doing hydro is the ability to grow indoors, because I have a perfect climate indoors. Most of you guys probably have air conditioning and heat, right? So if you want to grow indoors, you're already going to be using power. Now, what is the downside of using any sort of pump-driven system where we're moving fluid through? First of all, what does it do for us? By moving the fluid, we re-oxygenate the fluid, and hence, we don't get any problems. So even if our roots are almost completely submerged in fluid at all times, they stay healthy, and they look healthy like they're supposed to, right? The other thing is we have a reservoir, and we're pumping from that reservoir. If we're not doing ebb and flow or flood and drain, which is where the water comes up and drops back down, if we're just going to make, for smaller systems, I really don't recommend that, because you have to use significantly more capacity in your reservoir if you do this, because you're not holding water up in your grow media. So if we just simply take our tray and we have an overflow that sets the level in that tray, and we run fluid through there, we keep it topped up. The plant never runs out of fluid. And all we have to do is one place that's plumbed to these other grow trays, add fluid when we need to, and then we can drain that out and replace it when we have to, when it's gotten old. And I'm not going to get into that today, right? So that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because now we're never going to have the level get too low. We can even create kind of a Kratky air gap. And we can do that by basically, we have whatever your overflow is, we put in a valve. And when we start a new crop, we close it and we fill it all the way as high as we want it to be, above the overflow, let's say a couple inches. And we keep an eye on it as the plants start to grow, and we let the Kratky thing do its thing, and that air gap forms and those happy little roots are in there. And when it gets down below the stand-up, we open it so it'll drain, and we start running the pump. Now the pump maintains that exact air gap. And boy, you get like you're kind of hybridizing there. It's really a pump-driven system. You're just not using the pump, let's say, for the first 10 to 14 days of the grow cycle. And now you have all the advantages of a pump, and you get that grow kick. Because I'm telling you, that air gap for greens especially is awesome. Now, there's a lot of things you can do, and I have a link to Dr. Kratky's channel, like you can get a big giant barrel full of fluid and you can put a float valve in your grow containers. And once it goes down below that level, the float valve will just maintain that level. Let's say 50% fluid level. So halfway up or 40% up or whatever you want to set it at. And then there's no energy in the system. Again, though, this is not ideal for an indoor growing system. And I think, like, if you're going to do Kratky and you're going to do it indoors, I think you're probably best off like doing like lettuce in jars and either doing it in a really sunny window, which generally, not always, but generally doesn't work that great, or doing it under grow lights with, kind of the individual, like easy size, because it's easy to take a jar and dump it out. It's also easy if you have lettuce growing in a jar to like once every couple of days come in and just put like a marked line on your jar and just keep the fluid level there manually. You can do that if you really want to. And most of these crops, like these leaf crops and all, which are the most ideal to do this with, basils, arugulas, lettuce, your grow time to harvest is going to be somewhere between 20 and 35 days. So Kratky works well for that. If you want to start growing tomatoes and things like that, it can be done with Kratky. You're really going to have to do that outside. I don't believe in growing tomatoes indoors. And I don't consider greenhouse indoors. I consider outdoors greenhouses and outdoors. And then when I'm saying inside, I'm talking where you have to put a light on it. Like peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, anything that's going to have a large plant structure and use a lot of energy over a long time. I think that actually works better with like ebb and flow type systems in an outdoor environment or a greenhouse environment. And so I think what really I would tell a person is you need to sit down and say, what do I most want to grow with hydroponics and what do I most want from hydroponics? For me, I have an outdoor system built with pipes. It's kind of a flow through system. And that grows so much. I've gotten to where I pretty much only run it like a couple months before my workshop so I can feed all of my people a bunch of salads when I have 80 people here. And I can literally feed 80 people salad for days off of 3 10-foot pieces of pipe that run in my greenhouse, right? And it's just too much. Like I was feeding it to the ducks. I couldn't keep up with it, and I just shut it off for a lot of the year. A small indoor system, can grow enough salad for. It's just me and my wife here, and the kids once in a while. Again, cilantro, basil. Different like herbs and leafy greens, 2 or 3 different kinds of lettuces, some Swiss chard, etc. And then you have this massive amount of healthy, fresh, available all year round. And to me, it just seems easier to do with a pump-driven system and a little, like Allied Aqua pump that's like $50. And you can buy like a $20 pump on Amazon instead of the Allied Aqua ones I recommend. You can do that. It's fine. But remember, if the pump dies and you don't catch it, all your plants can die. And I've never had an Allied Aqua just die on me. I've had them like start to wear out after like 7 years, and you can kind of tell like it's time to replace this pump. And a lot of the cheap pumps, I've had those just die. Now, again, going back, what's the advantages here? You have to make the decision for yourself. If you're doing Kratky, there is no pump to die. Power goes out, doesn't matter as long as you're outside and you have enough light. However, don't underestimate the amount of effluent that you have to deal with. I'll also say, like, I got into doing like water hardness and what I ended up deciding was I would just follow the instructions with the powdered master blend fertilizer. You measure a certain amount of grams for so much water of each. And for the lettuce, you do a little bit less of some things. And for like fruiting plants, you do a little bit more. I just do that. I don't even check it. I usually mix it in a 5-gallon bucket. If you fill it up to like, you got the kind of ring around the top, that's about 1 gallon. So you to the bottom of that kind of top structure ring, that's 4 gallons. Throw it in there. I take a mortar mixer with a cordless drill, and then I, put it wherever I need it. And that's worked really well for me. And you can kind of like, if I have a system upstairs in my house, and you can kind of walk upstairs with a 4 gallons in a 5-gallon bucket. Don't try it with 5. Right. And it's pretty easy to then, maybe use a couple jars until you can dump the whole bucket or whatever. But going in a small reservoir, flow through system, grow containers, holding the material, that's worked best for me. And the Kingbo lights, by the way, that I featured last week, the grow lights, they're still on sale on Amazon for some crazy ass reason during all this shortage. So if you've been wanting to set this up, I cannot overstate how great the rapid rooter plugs are. They're the easy button. You can reuse them. I've reused some as many as 4 times. When I pull a plant out, and it's like, okay, this plant's got to go. It's all full of roots. I take it outside and I throw it on one of my ebb and flow beds. I throw it right on the top. The worms come up, eat all the roots off as they rot, and I just reuse them. I used to put some hydrogen peroxide on them before I reused them, and I just let the worms do their job. They kind of sit out in the sun. The worms come up at night when it's cool. They eat the roots off, and they kind of dry out in the sun, sitting on top of the ebb and flow bed. If you have a worm bed, you can throw them in there, like a worm farm or composting system. Just throw them on the top, and they'll clean them off for you. That's it, guys. I mean, that to me is the easy button. And you can do either one. Just think about how you're going to manage that fluid when it's time to remove it. And again, it is pretty easy to just maybe throw some bulkheads in some containers, but think about that. You can even dry fit your pipe so you can have that bulkhead just sticking out the bottom with a valve on it so it's closed. You don't need that. Like, you can just have a piece of pipe that you plug in when you're draining. At least drain down to where, you've got the majority of it out. It is a pain in the ass, guys, to deal with a 14-gallon tub or a 21-gallon tub that's half full. And you're trying to slide it out. You've got lights and everything. Think about that. And just kind of think about it. And I have a ton of podcasts as I've covered this stuff. All of the links are in the video notes for you guys today. And I appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Miyagi Mornings. All right, guys, I will hang out with you. And if you want to ask me any questions, go ahead and use all caps in the comments, and I will do my best to help you out and get you an answer. And then I got to get on doing today's show as well. And today's show is going to be on COVID's craziness. So if you want to listen to the audio podcast later today, that's what we'll be talking about. And let me just get this file rendered out because I don't believe in letting things happen that don't have to happen that are bad. All right. And we'll check and see if anybody's got any questions for me. I got no questions, man. Not a lot of chat on this one. Everybody was pumped for it, but here you go, guys. You can ask me anything on this, and I'll do what I can to help you. Nothing? All right. Kratky can get nasty, Bamboo Calculator says on Odyssey. I agree. It can get pretty skanky looking in the container. It works really great outdoors where, I have this rule, like if you spill in the sink, you didn't really spill. That's why when I make my meat and I do my bottling and my racking and all, I set a little stool up right next to the sink and I put the target container in the sink and then you rack over and you haven't spilled if it overflows or something goes wrong, right? It went in the sink. Well, with hydroponics, if you're outside, all you've done is fertilize the grass if you spill, right? When you spill in your spare bedroom or your closet or your guest bathroom or whatever, like you've spilled, you've made a mess. And dealing with that excess is one of the reasons I don't really care for Kratky indoors. I'm not, and I've used it and I've played with it, but it's just more, it ends up being more work. If you have a pump, even your sump, you can take like, let's say it's time to change fluid. You can run another pipe. Like, pipe is cheap, fittings are cheap. It all adds up. But in the end, it's, ½ inch is what you're talking about to do stuff like this. You can just take a bucket and you can pump your water out of your sump into that bucket to do a change. Now, I will tell you guys one more thing. I do not ever, and I mean ever, do 100% changes. I know they say you're supposed to, and I guess if you're doing commercial and you're running like a multi-acre greenhouse or something, it probably is necessary. When I've run the system for a while, and I know my solids are probably pretty high, I will go down to basically 20% of what the system will hold, and then I'll refill it with fresh effluent. And I have never had a problem. And I mean never had a problem. Now, again, these are indoor systems. You're not going to have a great instance of disease and stuff like that, or insect pests or what have you. But I'm going to go ahead and I guess I'm going to wrap up. Oh, wait. Got a question here. Dusty Dog, for indoor installations, have you dealt with mosquito issues? No. I've never had mosquitoes breeding in an indoor hydro system. And I would also tell you this is probably another good reason to use a pump, because sooner or later that larva is going to go down a chute and end up in a sump, and it's going to get sucked into the pump. And I'm not saying that's why I haven't had. I mean, there's just not a lot of mosquitoes in the house. I mean, I guess if you kept your windows open without screens all the time, you could end up breeding some mosquitoes. And then what you would have to do is you need to either use screen, and Dr. Kratky has a lot of material because they're doing outdoors, no pump, right? So you can definitely have mosquitoes there. He has a lot of material on his channel on how you can use screening to keep mosquitoes out. The other thing you could do, and this would be really easy, just get some of the BT, they make dunks. They look like little donuts. You throw them in ditches and stuff like that. But if you just use the bits, they come in a jug, like a half-gallon jug, and they're little bits of the same thing they make those little pucks out of. And I mean, you can use just literally in a small system, like a pinch of those every once in a while. And what those have in them is a bacterium called Bacillus thuringosus, or BT. And this is a naturally occurring bacteria. It's actually used in organic farming as well. Like you can spray it on corn, and the corn earworm, it will infect them, and it will kill them. Right. So it's an organic control that way. Well, it also infects and kills mosquitoes, and it's completely harmless to humans. And so to me, if you're doing a large system, you've got a different situation. It would be a lot of that. Right. And it could add a significant expense. But I think a jug of those things is like $20. And, honestly, I think that they probably get to where they don't work anymore before you run out of using it, right? Like it's 2 years old, man, probably doesn't have any more active bacterium in it, But I think that's the easiest answer to me. I have wicking beds out in my aviary. And so I have a fill tube that goes down in there, and then there's a water reservoir in the bottom, and then it wicks up to the plants that grow in soil. And about once every 2 weeks, I take a pinch of that stuff and drop it down that filler tube, and I don't have any mosquito problems out there at all. Again, if you were doing aquaponics, it's not a problem because fish will eat them, right? So hopefully that answers your question. Anybody else? No, I don't see anything. Hayes Anderson says the eggs will cling to the surface skin layer of the surface of the water. A body of water you are not going to drink. I'm not. Oh, soap. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, a little bit of dish soap probably wouldn't hurt in a hydro system. I don't know. I just see, especially with pumps, like you could end up with a sudsing thing going on there. I guess because I do so much hydro, but I also do so much aquaponics. Sometimes I don't think about one of the real advantages with hydro versus aquaponics. Aquaponics, we're using fish. So a lot of things that you can do with hydro, if you do it with aqua, you kill your fish, right? So I wouldn't want to put soap in with my fish, but yeah, I guess that would probably work. My grandmother used to use like a little bit of soap in a spray bottle with water for like snails and stuff on houseplants, and it seemed to work pretty good. But yeah, I think that's about it. I don't see anything here. A few comments over on Float and a few comments over on, okay, actually do have a question here. For Kratky, do you put soil in the rapid rooter grow plugs? No, Kratky is a pure hydroponics technology. There's no soil. Nothing I've talked about today other than that little soliloquy I just gave you on my wicking beds, which is not hydroponics, involves soil. Rapid rooter plugs are made from a spongy material. They probably do have some peat in them, I would guess. But the rapid rooter plug is a little bitty plug about the size of a film container, a little dimple in it. And if that dimple is kind of closed on you and your seed doesn't want to go in it, you take a number 2 pencil eraser side and push it in. It makes a perfect hole for you. Drop your seed in, you set it in water, plant grows, roots go down through the plug and into the grow media, whether that's like an ebb and flow leaca material or it's just straight water or whatever. No soil at all there. And I'm considering soil blocking versus Kratky for starting tomato plants for sale. That's certainly not a question, but you can do that. I will tell you, that using hydro to start plants to grow in soil works great. It works great. What I've found, though, is a pump-driven system tends to work better because the Kratky does amazing really quick with things like tomatoes and peppers. But what happens is all those beautiful roots that grow in that air gap, they don't really like it when you put soil on top of them. So I've had better luck doing a hydro for start system. Now, if you want to do soil blocks specifically to sell transplants, then you could just basically do something that looks like hydro, but it's really soil, right? You could just get some large grow trays, and then you could do a really shallow ebb and flow, right? So you only bring water in there up a couple millimeters. It waters the bottom. You put that on a timer, and that goes off 2 or 3 times a day, and take like 10 or 10, 20 trays and lay them in there with your soil blocks. And once they get up to the size you want to sell them, you can pack them off into something else. But that's really not what we're talking about today. Same guy asking the question, Wisco DYL. So put tomato seed in it, and you've got a plant in a few weeks. Sounds good to me. Yeah, that's exactly how the rapid rooters work. It's exactly how they work. And they work for transplants. You won't be reusing them. You take the rapid rooter plug with the plant growing in it, and you go ahead and you drop that into the soil and plant it like you would anything else. Now, here's the thing I did, and it worked really well. I did exactly what I was talking about, kind of an ebb and flow shallow tray system. And the standard 6-packs that fit perfectly, by the way, into 1010 and 1020 trays, right? A rapid rooter plug fits in there like it was made to go in there. I mean, it's like a glove fit. So you set your little 6-packs in your 1020s or whatever. You throw your seeds in, and again, you want to do this with an ebb and flow. Now, with those, I would want to bring the fluid level up about an inch. So they're about, I guess, 2.5 inches long. So a third of the, somewhere around a third, make sure they get good and wet. And then you're going to want to run them, since it's not soil, you're going to want to run that like you run your pump for 15 minutes on, 2 hours off, 15 minutes on, 2 hours off, a little $8 timer. And then you just have a 6-pack you can sell. This is the issue. You really, 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 really got to keep it irrigated. And you got to irrigate it until it's planted into soil, right? You got to irrigate it with effluent. You got to have nutrient, because there's no nutrient in the rapid rooter, right? Whatever it's gotten from being in your system. So I don't really think that's a good way to do it for sale. Right? I want to sell a plant in soil, so there's some time when that person gets it home for them to harden it off or whatever. But for personal use, for making starts for my garden, this has been gold. It's been absolute gold. All I do is take like those silver aluminum, like throwaway turkey basting pans or whatever, and I set them out in a shady area, and I fill them up, with an inch of fertility fluid, and I take my plants out of my system. I drop them in there. I let them go a day or two getting filtered sunlight. Then I kind of move them out, give them a little bit more fluid, give them a day of getting a good amount of sun, and then I plant them into the soil and harden them off that way. That's been really, really great for personal use. I don't think I would do that, though, for sale, unless the person I was selling it to knew what they were buying. Like, I'll tell you what that would be really great for, is if you could find a place that is a hydroponics commercial growing operation that wanted to outsource their starts, because you need about, if you're going to grow 500 square feet, which is a pretty big, small scale commercial operation, you need maybe 50 square feet to start all the plants for that 500, about 10%. Because when we're starting plants, itty bitty, right? They can grade up on top of each other. So that'd be an interesting thing that a couple of people could do. Somebody that just wants to grow and harvest, and it's very time consuming to do starts, but it can be done in a small area. So there's a lot of ways that could work. Anyway, guys, I got to go. Again, we're going to talk about the COVID's craziness. Will it ever go away? Will it ever stop? Is it going to get worse? All that kind of stuff on the Survival Podcast today, available where? At thesurvivalpodcast.com. And since some of you might end up watching this, in the future and want to check that out, it would probably be good if I told you the episode number that will be today's show. And I'm stalling because I'm not sure right now what that's going to be. It will be episode 2946. So if you just go to the search box on the site, and don't do it yet because this is live and it's not done yet, but I would say after about 3 o'clock on Monday, August 30th, anytime after that, if you go drop that number in the search box on the site, you will find this podcast. And I think this is going to be an interesting one today. You guys have a great day. Are red wigglers commonly found in nature? Yes. Yes, they are. Anyway, I got to go, guys. Take care.